This is the Conservative Czar, May 22nd, 2023. This is the second part of the debt ceiling videos I'm doing. This is a debt ceiling part 2, the basics. And I want to talk about what we're really talking about here in this debt ceiling. A lot of people understand it, but a lot of people don't. And so what we're talking about here is the United States Congress has limited the federal government's debt that they can borrow. That's a law. It says this is the debt. You can't exceed this debt. You can't exceed it. That's the debt ceiling law. And every 6 months, a year, 2 years, the government, the federal government, comes to the Congress and says, we need to increase it. We need to borrow more money. And basically, they get the job done. They raise it. And this time, the Republicans are threatening not to raise it if certain things aren't done. What happens when you don't raise the debt limit? The thing here is, and why this is an issue, is that the government borrows money to pay for ongoing expenses. Ongoing expenses of the federal government are paid, somewhere between 10 and 20% of it, paid by debt. They borrow to pay salaries. They borrow to buy a tank. A portion, not all, but a portion. I'm going to guess, and it's a guess, by the way. I don't know the exact number. It's somewhere between 10 and 20% of the federal government is in debt. It borrows to pay for it. So what happens is when the debt ceiling isn't raised, the government cannot borrow money to pay for some of the government, somewhere between 10 and 20%. It's a serious thing, no question about it. That when it happens, when it actually happens, then the government has to do some things. It's like a government shutdown. They have to decide and prioritize the things that need to be cut. And that's where this rub is coming in. That's the debate. Okay? Are you going to allow them to carte blanche to borrow more money unless you cut spending? If you don't approve the debt ceiling, they're going to have to cut spending. They're going to be forced to cut spending. Now, what they'll do is make it as painful as they can to the American people. They will threaten to withhold Social Security checks. They will say, well, we can't pay, and we have to furlough or put on leave some government employees. We're going to have to cut the military. By the way, they'll never, ever cut aid to Ukraine. They'll threaten everything in the world, but they will not cut aid to Ukraine. Mark my words on that. So that's kind of the lay of the land in terms of what we're up against. The federal government has to borrow money, and the House of Representatives under Kevin McCarthy said, and they voted and passed the bill saying the debt ceiling has to increase. The spending has to decrease. Spending has to decrease. And they passed this bill. And this is the thing about Kevin McCarthy, why he has changed so much. And he has changed. He has changed. And he grew some here in this fight because he doesn't have the votes in the House of Representatives to pass a debt ceiling limit, a real one. Let's say it was all up to the House of Representatives. He doesn't have the votes. He cajoled and he finally got it so that they passed the bill with the understanding it wasn't, for some of them, understanding well, it's not real because we'll change and we'll fix it. A lot of them said that. Going into negotiations, and you get up there and say, well, we're passing a debt ceiling limit, but we don't mean it. That's what some of these House members did. A few of them. And so But McCarthy got it passed. And this is a kind of an important part of this, because this was difficult. He has a 4-seat majority in the House of Representatives. There are 3 members of the House that are liberal and will not support McCarthy on this debt ceiling when push comes to shove. And I want to name those 3. John Katko of New York, Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, and David Joyce of Ohio. You might as well have Democrats in these seats. Just give it to them. We have a one vote majority. These are the 3 worst. They will not support McCarthy at the end. So what are we talking about? There's one vote. One vote for the House to stand up and vote. These 3 are gone. Vote for a hard debt ceiling and force a debt ceiling crisis. One vote. But I'm going to name you 8 other congressmen that lean against it. So the moderates, the Democrats, the White House only needs 1 congressman to switch. 3 are already going to switch. We know that. And these, I'm going to name the names. Dan Newhouse of Washington, Dusty Johnson of South Dakota, Kevin Hern of Oklahoma, Mike Turner of Ohio, Don Bacon of Nebraska, Brandon Williams of New York, Mike Lawler of New York, and Nancy Mace of South Carolina. She's there because she's so flaky you never know what the vote's going to be for her. I mean, she could have a dream in the middle of the night that tells her to vote for the communists, and she'll do it. I mean, she's just flake. But those 8, I think 4 of them will flip. And that's how good Kevin McCarthy has been in this process. He got a resolution passed that says, make these spending cuts, or we're going to have a debt ceiling. We're going to stop the debt ceiling. McCarthy did that. It is amazing, okay, that he did it. Going forward now, McCarthy is going to compromise. And that's where everything hits the road. By the way, the debt ceiling that McCarthy and the Republicans, it was the best they could get. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't even close. But they're going to go from that position in the White House compromise to what they hope is a middle ground. White House is playing hardball and saying, no, we're not going to give you 10%. Now, if that continues, the debt ceiling will not go forward. All of these House members will get up and say, oh my gosh, we got to stop, we can't do this. They might join with the Democrats, actually join with them to pass a compromise or the Biden's debt ceiling. But there's a law already